Well, good morning and welcome back to another glorious but slightly cooler morning here in Cambridge. Now, after the recent heat waves, it's nice to be able to come outside and show you something really rather special. Now, many of you know EcoFlow have been a great friend to the channel, and today they've given me an advanced preview of their new stream system. So today we're going to look at the new EcoFlow Stream AC 5000 plug-in battery. Okay, now before we get started, let me explain. This is a pre-production model. That means that some things that I show you today may change on this unit. But looking at it, it looks pretty final hardware to me. So if you do notice something when it comes out, it's slightly different. That's the reason why it's a pre-production model. Okay, let me address the elephant in the room, and that is plug-in batteries. Now, for those of you that saw my video the other day where we talked about the plug-in solar being available from the 27th of August, you'll know that batteries were not included in that. So it's a shame that we can't just plug that into the wall, plug this into the device, and be off to the races. But that doesn't mean you can't use this. And I think that's a lot of confusion came about from people saying, well, does that mean I'm not allowed to use my batteries? You can still use these batteries, including the older ones. The only difference is they're not supposed to be plugged in using a standard plug. Now, can you do that? Absolutely you can. But if you want to stay compliant with the current wiring regulations, this needs to be removed. This needs to be connected via a fused spur, preferably on its own circuit into your consumer unit with the appropriate protection on that circuit. So that's what I plan to do with this unit, is to connect it to the fused spur in my office. However, there was one minor change that EcoFlow made that means I've got to wait for my electrician to show up. In that the connector on the other end, which looks absolutely identical to the connector that goes onto the older AC system, you can't use it. And the reason is, although the pinout seems to be exactly the same, the locking mechanism, which is this twist piece on the top here, has been flipped 180 degrees, which means that this bit catches on the unit if you try and use the older plug. Now, that might be that they've changed some wiring in here, I don't know, but you can't use the older cable. You do need to use the one that came with the unit. So we'll get that wired in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to swap out this unit that was connected to a fused spur in the office for this unit, and we'll get that plugged in. And then over the next couple of months, I'll be able to give you some information about how it works, what's it like to run, what's it like to live with sitting in your office there. Okay, let's talk about the basics of the unit. Now, this is a 5 kilowatt hour battery. So the older system, this is the AC Pro, that it's I don't know if I actually know if it's replacing it. I'm assuming this system's going to stay around, but its bigger brother, shall we say. This is a 5 kilowatt hour versus a 2 kilowatt hour battery. It doesn't look that much bigger. You do notice it when you pick it up, because this is about 44 kilograms as opposed to about 21 kilograms. So bend your knees if you're moving one of these around. Very, very simple device. Just like the old AC Pro, I'll spin it around in a moment, but we've got a single AC port on the side here. We've got a single port to connect to the grid, and we've got a simple display on the front with a power on and off button. And that's it. There are heat sinks all the way down the back, so it is passively cooled. They do recommend in the manual that you leave some space to the sides and above to allow convection of air up the back, and you should sit it out from the wall about 30 centimeters is what they're saying in the manual. Okay, let's talk about connecting this to the grid. So just like the old system, the maximum output from these in the UK is 800 watts if grid connected. If you're using it in an off-grid mode, in that you're not connecting this through your fused spur, you can take up to 3000 watts through the AC port here on the side. Now, 3000 watts depends on the configuration. In a single battery mode like this, you can only pull about 2500 watts. If you have the add-on battery, which we'll come on to in a moment, then you can go up to 3000 watts. The unit itself is IP65. When the port is covered, so there is this little rubber port on the side here, when that is covered, then it is IP65 and can live outside. Now, they do recommend that you don't put these in direct sunlight or where they're going to get rained on, that you have some sort of cover over them, but the unit itself is IP65. Now, just like the older system, you can use a microinverter with this because this is just a battery. There is no solar input on this one whatsoever. You can plug a microinverter into the AC port here and it becomes an in port as well as an out port. So you can send power into the unit as well as take power out through that one individual port. Now, one downside to this system is on the older AC Pro, you had 2 ports. So you could actually use one for in and one for out. You only have a single port on the AC 5000. Now, with the older system, if you wanted to expand them, you had to get the optional parallel cable. So you'd buy a second unit, you put it alongside, you'd have a parallel cable that would connect the two. The parallel cable, for reasons unknown to anybody, was a separate item that everyone forgot to order. So you got your new unit, you're all excited. Now I've got to go and find a parallel cable on Amazon. With the new units, they are stackable. So there is a port on the bottom. Again, I'm not going to try and tip this over because it is nearly 50 kilos. There is a port on the bottom that lets you put another unit that looks very similar to it directly underneath, an add-on battery, and you go from 5 to 10 kilowatt hours. And you can actually add two extra batteries to one of these units, make a stack that is up to 15 kilowatt hours. And then using the EcoFlow software to tie them all together, you can actually have multiple stacks up to a maximum system size of 90 kilowatt hours. Now let's talk about warranty, because one of the fears that a lot of people have about buying a battery system, especially if all you're going to do is charge it overnight from cheap rate electricity and then discharge it all through the day, is how long will it last? Well, the honest answer is, I don't know. But this system comes with a 10-year warranty, so I'm not going to worry about it. If anything goes wrong with it, if the battery starts to degrade in any way, shape or form, then they can replace it under the warranty. But I think 10 years, you should be pretty good. Okay, so I've only had this unit for a couple of days, so I'm not going to give you an in-depth review because it is a prototype unit as well. Getting it connected, getting the G98 done has been a bit of a challenge because it's not in the database yet. But as a plug-in battery system, it's unobtrusive. You plug this in the corner of your room and you don't even notice it's there. It just sits there and it does its thing. You charge it with either cheap rate or, in my case, free energy from solar. And when you need it, you discharge the energy from it and it just does its thing. I think the industrial design is much better. Rather than the plastic enclosure here, we've got a metal enclosure. It just feels more premium than the older system. And that's nothing to say there's nothing wrong with the older system. This has been running in my office for well over a year now. But I just like the industrial design of this. It just looks nicer. I think it's just a better look and feel. On the front here, you've got this sort of mirrored finish. When it powers up, there is actually a display here that shows you how much battery you've got as a percentage. I think this is a much better system than the one that's currently on here. There is an LED strip, I think it's on this side here, that runs up and it just sort of shows you roughly how full it is. Well, this gives you a more accurate, this is 25% full. There is a power button on the front here. It is almost useless. You hold it for 2 seconds, it turns the unit off. You hold it for 2 seconds, it turns the unit on. That's all it does. I'm not sure it needed to be front and center here, but there's probably a reason why the designers chose to put it there. Other than that, it's a really simple unit. You have your grid port on the back, you have your AC port on the side, and you have your battery connector on the bottom there. And that's it. You plonk it on the floor, you wire it into a fuse spur, and you're ready to go. Now, there are a couple of things that I don't like. It would have been nice if the power cable was the same power cable that came with the older system. It would have made moving one of these somewhere else and just swapping this out into the fuse spur really easy without having to get an electrician to come back in and wire it and do all the testing to make sure everything's okay. I understand why they've done it because, and I'll pop up an image on the screen now. You can see here that the fins on the side here, the heatsink fins would actually have obstructed this. If this was on the other side, then you wouldn't be able to reach in and get your finger in there. I think they could have designed around that to use the same cable. Other things, it would have been nice if it was a little bit lighter. When you start getting up to about 50 kilograms in a system like this, you really do need to think about watching your back when you move them. So you've got to bend your knees, be able to pick this up properly if you do need to move it. as I say, these are stackable. When you stack them, there is a small screw hole here in the back. That small screw hole allows you to connect or bracket to the wall, so you can actually fix this to the wall. It will stop the stack from tipping over. I don't have the add-on battery, but I'm assuming each of the add-on batteries has one of those as well, so you can secure the stack at multiple points as you go up. Other things that I think they could have improved on: the screen, as I say, in any form of bright light is almost unreadable because of this mirrored finish that they've put on there. Other than that, there's really not much to not like about it. It is a very well designed unit. It's a little bit more industrial looking than this, but as for something that is just going to sit in the corner and do its thing year in, year out, I think it looks great. Now, what about if you've already bought into the older design system? Well, it would have been nice if you could have just connected this into this using the parallel cable, but that's not the way that these interoperate with each other. So you set this up separately within the space within your EcoFlow app, and then you combine them virtually into one system. Anyway, this is just a first look. There is going to be much more information about the whole Stream system, including this system's brother, which is the Stream. Let me get these right. The Stream 5000. This is the Stream AC 5000, which is the same unit, looks exactly the same, except it has the MPPTs on the back to allow you to plug solar directly into it. Much more on this whole system coming in the near future. Once we get production ready units, get them installed, we'll let you know how they perform. With that, if you have any questions, do hit me up in the comments below. Next week, I'm going to be running a live stream. Details will be on the screen down below me. If you want to join that live stream, if you have questions, I'll do my best to answer them on that stream. With that, I'm going to sign off. It just remains for me to say thank you for watching this video. I hope it was informative, and if I'm lucky, I'll see you back here real soon for another video. Take care. Bye-bye.